and welcoming Professor Gordon Hewitt.
Thank you, Chef.
Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thanks. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor, first of all, personally, to have a return invitation to the IEF. You never know with return invitations. Either it's a chance to build on what you said or to redeem yourself by giving a second chance at the stuff. But I want to look at it as a bridge to the next phase of the conversation. And all I can say at the beginning, because my role really has changed a lot in this last year, when I had the chance to speak with many of you, and I see we've got a few people here who come back for a second dose of the stuff, it was my first and long overdue visit to Indonesia as a country. And all I can tell you honestly is whatever small impression I may have made on the business or government community, university community here, has been vastly exceeded by the impression that you made on me. What I saw was a country very deep, very rich in its potential and its talents, with an unbelievable portfolio of opportunities. And of course, the challenge is how do you match the talents to the opportunity and release the value. So I saw here something of a gentle sleeping giant of a country, almost forgotten by the world, but could well be one of the leading innovative countries over the next 10 to 20 years. And my job this morning is to think about what that agenda might look like and how you take your place, not as we often call it disparagingly, an emerging nation, which I think is terrible, but a re-emerging power. People forget where the center of gravity for economic activity was 200 years ago. And this is almost like the rebirth of a great country. And all I can tell you, and it's personally from me to you, having come here for the first time a year ago, but now having joined the team of 6CAP, I'm spending a lot of time in Indonesia. I'm loving it. And I pledge you today, person to person, anything I can do personally to help the Indonesian agenda, to help the people capture these innovation opportunities, it would be a great honor and pleasure for me to continue that for the rest of my life's work. I pledge that to you today. Whatever is required, I will do it. But it's time, if we're going to do that, to rethink what innovation is all about. To rethink as an activity, what's the agenda, and as a corporate activity, what are the processes we need to release this great potential. I remember saying last year, for those of you who were here before, in my early studies of markets, which are both dynamic and complex. Dynamic is one challenge. That means it moves faster than you can study it. And most companies love data to tell them what to do. But I think they're trying to solve for what I call T-1. They're trying to solve for the way data told you the market looked like a month ago, 6 months, or a year ago. But strategy and innovation should solve for T+1, not T-1. And when you've got highly dynamic changes which are also complex, by complex I mean there are behavioral shifts that take place that no one was predicting. It's amazing for me that 7 or 8 years ago, no one who calls himself a futurologist, charging enormous fees at huge conventions, were even predicting the concept of a Facebook as an evolution of connectivity on the internet. It was still one-on-one, one-on-two, not millions upon millions. So when markets are both dynamic and complex, it raises the bar. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who were not at last year's event, my early research showed there are only 3 types of firms in dynamic and complex environments. Do you want to hear my 3 categories? It's my whole life's work. All right? This is worth money. And as a Scotsman, I charge, believe me. There are those firms who make things happen. Number 2, there are those firms who watch things happen. And number 3, there are those firms who wonder what the heck happened. Are we okay with that? That's the good news. There only are 3 categories. And every one of you is in one of these 3 categories today. I asked IEF last year, hands up, those of you who today are in categories number 2 or 3. Those of you in institutions who are watching the world or waking up and saying, whoops, what the heck did we miss? Not a hand went up. The brilliance in the room was almost flattering. Everyone was shaping the future. No one was looking at data. No one had any regrets. And I'll never forget you for that, because with that one stroke of brilliance, you took out business schools and consultants in one stroke. You forced basically Harvard to write nice case studies. I wish the world was like that. In fact, if anything, the categories are showing an asymmetry in terms of what category you actually go into. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, just before we get into our first deep exercise today, there is a kind of similarity. Shoaib was kind in his introduction, of course, about what I see in boardrooms. There is a kind of analogy to get us kick-started here between the challenge of innovation itself and this strange award I got from Buckingham Palace. It's strange when you get a letter from the Queen, you know. And my wife and my son said, she's writing to you again. I said, well, I don't normally get letters from Buckingham Palace. What are you talking about? And you go along, and you've got these fancy titles, and no one really in the world has any clue what it means. The Americans in particular, my colleagues in the States have no idea. They thought CBE was a new degree. Stood for complete business eccentric or something like that. And I said, no, this is a very, very distinguished honor. You should bow to me and respect me, whatever. And you know what? CBE is kind of cool, huh? Have you met many CBEs? What do you think? Kind of cool, huh? Look, I'm not looking for praise. I'm looking for sympathy. If nothing else, it shows, like the British honor system, the British at least retain a sense of humor. Only the British could make you a commander of something that doesn't exist. So I wake up and say, you made me a commander. I need an empire. Give me something I can influence. And that's exactly the problem of boards of directors of Fortune 500 today. I call it all title, no action. All title, like a SWOT analysis, but decreasing influence in the market around them. And that's what innovation is all about. It's not about technical progress anymore. It's about the influence over market evolution. Shaping futures, not forecasting them. And so getting around the dilemma of the CBE is one of our challenges today. And in our talk, which will be very wide-ranging and a little bit short because we started late, I want to suggest this to you. There's a lot of talk in today's world about best practice. Ever heard that phrase? Now, come on, if you're a best practice, you're already imitating. If you spend 1 second in a company studying best practices, you're following someone else's agenda. So I want to break the mold today and say an innovation debate should start not with best practice, but creating next practice. This is about next practice creation, not imitating slavishly. Indonesia does not need to follow the lead of other countries. And I wish, in finishing my opening remarks for praise for you, I wish my tiny country, which between the years 1745 and 1800, a long time ago, had this largest single track record in global innovation. That's called Scotland. When Scotland was at its poorest, beaten eventually by the English forces, the Jacobean Revolution was played down, and all of a sudden, in a whole range of disciplines, from physics to chemistry to engineering to economics in Adam Smith, the University of Glasgow, where I was trained, to the study of philosophy and David Hume from Edinburgh, almost all the big revolutions in European society in a period of 45 years came from my tiny country. And you know what? Love it as I do, we've lost it. And I think it's hard to reclaim. We've actually lost it. And I wish, and I tell my government when I go back home, you don't need brains, you need ambition. And what I saw last year, my abiding memory of IEF, was the collective ambition of people in this room. You can't innovate with left brain alone. It is not purely an analytical exercise. This is about competing on ambitions. So we'll talk a little bit about Indonesia's ambition this morning. What are you capable of? It's a different question to what do you know? And that's what I want to start by talking about. So let's start, shall we? This is called the early morning. I'm going to start with an examination. Is that all right? You're going to get a test. You all right with that, huh? Well, they told you when you came here you would get an exam, didn't they? You will get an exam. I'm an old-fashioned Scottish teacher. You will be examined. And I will mark it. And I take bribes. You know, this is in the flowery language we use. I want to conduct the session, be true to thyself. And this will be a co-creation session, not just me lecturing. I'll give you some ideas to play around with, but I want to hear what you have to say. And to use where you're at as a starting point to think, how do we intercept the old world of innovation and get into the new world? So I need to have some idea of where you're at. Is that okay? So we're going to start with an exam. And by the way, in this exam, everyone wins. Are you okay with that? There are no losers. So don't worry about making a fool of yourself, even though some will try, okay? You don't have to worry. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And I'd like you to use them, first of all, to get to know, to socialize with the people at your table, get to know them. And it's a very quick impulse test, I would call it. There may be no correct answer, but I want to know where you are. So 3 foundation points. One is, who would you give the title of the most innovative company worldwide to over the last 5 years, anywhere on the planet, and why? It's like a voting contest, okay? No time for long analytics. Just put your views on the table and say, I would vote for X, Y, or Z. Number 2, I want you to think of what do you think is the single biggest innovation and why? And that's an important question because it will tease out what we think are the criteria of important innovations in today's world, not the world I was brought up and started my studies in. And thirdly, just to make it more interesting, what do you think is the most innovative industry worldwide over the last 5 years and why? 3 questions to start with. Is that all right? You don't have to be an expert. It's an opinion poll. And you can talk to the people at your tables and get to know them at the same time. Okay? So you've got about 10 minutes max to do this, and then we'll score it. Is that all right? And we'll see where you're thinking about this stuff. So have a go. Enjoy the company of your colleagues this morning. And a little word of warning before you start. If any of you find yourself alone with no one to talk to, come to me for psychotherapeutic advice. Okay, I'm very happy to move from economics to psychology quickly. Okay, go, 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 go. And you can't vote for yourselves. Keep going, keep going. How are you doing?